I'm Steph, that quirky bird girl. Hold up, I just heard a western osprey. Oh, it's a laughing kookaburra. A blue jay. And don't even get me started on the belted kingfisher.
Birds, aves, uccellis. That's birds in 3 different languages. The more you bird know.
Hit that follow and subscribe button for more bird fun. Watch my TV show one day.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to That Quirky Bird Girl. I am your host, Steph, and I am bringing to you all the second episode of this value series where birds have helped me learn how to thrive, to grow, to change things I didn't love about myself, and to learn more about the parts that I did love or could love. I just needed a little time and a little guidance. So I got there, but I want to bring you all there with me as well. Birds have helped me through so many hard moments in my life, and I have learned so much from them, because of them, and I continue to learn every single day that I come outside and I spend more time with our lovely birds, and I'm so grateful for that, and I want to share a little bit of that with you all. So the first episode of this series was all about resilience, and if you haven't had a second to go ahead and watch that episode, I really recommend it because it's going to build into this one that I'll be talking about in just a few moments. In order for you to really lean into joy in the way that I'll be talking about it in this episode, it's really important that you understand that tackling the skill of resilience is going to help you cross that bridge in getting to joy. I wasn't able to get there literally without the skill of resilience. There were so many instances where I felt like I could have just kept down and I could have continued feeling the way that I was already kind of bubbling up and feeling, which was at the time pretty bad. And I had to have this moment or experience where I was just like, okay, at some point I'm going to have to choose either joy or continuing where I'm at. And so it's really brought me to this episode and to a larger degree, this series. So I'm excited to be diving a little bit more in with you all today. We'll be talking about joy and the expression of joy. We'll be going through a few different of our lovely chapter topics that I have listed here for you all, and I'll have listed them as banners throughout. So if you want to skip to a certain part of a video, just look for those little banners in the top left or the bottom left corner. As usual, y'all, I'll get us started with a definition of what joy is. And joy is a deep emotion of intense, overwhelming, in a good way, sometimes depending on who you are, maybe even in a bad way, of happiness. Joy is, to an extent, extreme happiness. And oftentimes what's so beautiful about joy and in the ways that it differs from happiness is that it comes from an inner part of ourselves. It's not something that's always expressed with other people, or joy isn't necessarily something most of the time that you share. Joy is something that you create. Joy is something that you have an experience through. And as I said earlier, that you choose. And I'll get into, towards the end of our time together, a little bit about what that can actually look like and how some birds can help you make your way there. A simple replay of what joy might be for one person is walking outside and smelling the flowers as they bloom in early spring, which it is right now here in Central Park, actually. If you look behind me, I'm in front of Bethesda Fountain, which is one of the biggest monuments here in the park. And this brings a lot of people some joy. Architecture can bring joy. There's something that I've done on my walks for a really long time. When I go out, I attempt to find 3 things that make me feel happy or that make me feel excited about being where I'm at. And that just kind of grounds me and allows me to remember that it's okay, and rather encourage to find those pockets of joy that I can really use to appreciate and be grateful for the environment and the experiences that I'm in. Joy can be walking outside and hearing 2 American robins screaming at each other because they're getting more and more territorial because nesting season is starting soon. There are so many reasons that can spark you joy. If you're growing your own business, a milestone, a win, there are just 1,000 ways that you can feel joy. But the thing is, and the hardest part of joy is that you have to choose it. You have to make a conscious effort to say, this is going to bring me joy. And then sometimes I've had to do it in the past, especially after my divorce. I had to figure out how I was going to get to that piece of joy, how I was going to get to that land, let's say, of joy, and it wasn't easy. So that being said, this episode is going to go over joy, and it's going to sound, or maybe it's going to even feel like it's something that's simple and not nuanced, and has some sort of levity or ease to it. But I want to remind you that it's not necessarily that. It is something that you will have to work at every single day. And there are going to be days when it's easier, and there are going to be days when it's a lot harder. And you just have to keep reminding yourself that the joy, the gift of joy, is worth it all in the end, to continue trying, to continue showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't want to, even when whatever it might be. You're making the choice to show up for yourself. You've already won. Joy helps us out with a lot of different areas in our life. And I talked about some of them a little bit earlier. Overall mental health and well-being is one of those. But I want to get a little bit more nuanced. Last week, we talked about specific traits that will be coming up in future episodes as well. And one of those is all around growth. In order for you to actually grow and to feel the momentum of your growth, you have to recognize, or be able to recognize, that that's something that's happening for you, within you. And if you aren't taking moments to sort of pause and be grateful and accept all of the amazing things that have already come into your path, it becomes really difficult for those good things to feel like they still matter. And then your days can become mundane. They can start to feel like they are all the same. They can start to feel like you're not inching forward, when in actuality you really are. It's just, if you aren't celebrating, if you aren't experiencing joy through those minor, wins, however you want to phrase them, then it's just going to be hard to keep trucking on. That's just the nature, unfortunately, of the way our brains work. They look for evidence, and if we are not sitting in the evidence of how awesome we are, or awesome it is that we did XYZ thing, then our brain just kind of hydroplanes over it. So it's important to stop, take moments, and express joy towards the growth that you've had thus far, so that you can continue growing. This also leads into self-fulfillment. There's no way that we can be happy within ourselves on our own if we cannot also allow ourselves to experience growth within and through ourselves. It also helps with our ability to be kind. And the first rule with kindness is to be kind to ourselves. The kindness that we put in and give ourselves is the same kindness that we're going to give out into the world. So if you're sitting there, you're focusing so much on your output, turn it inwards. What's your input? How are you talking to yourself? Are you being kind? And a lot of that self-talk, that positive self-talk, can come from moments where you're experiencing extreme joy. There have been times where I've identified a new bird and I was like, awesome, this is great. I'm so good at this. And then those same words, those same experiences eventually became a part of my own self-talk, ultimately helping me feel better about myself, helping me feel more fulfilled, more in love with myself, and more kind to myself overall. Kindness is one of the hardest skills to continue to put out into the world. And if you can continue to give it to yourself, it'll just come back to you in spades. I talked about this last week as well, but we're going to get into the survivor mindset a little bit. This is one of the hardest things that I've encountered. I did not have an easy childhood. I've talked about this in a few past episodes. And I also got divorced about 2 years ago. So there were a lot of situations that have happened to me in my life that made me feel like things were happening to me rather than for me. And oftentimes it can be really hard to lean into that, that these situations, or that certain environments that you were placed in that you arguably should not have been placed in, ultimately can help you build and grow and become a better person. But it's just about the framing of those things. When you start to experience joy, it's almost like you crave more. It becomes something that you want to grasp onto even closer. And so leaving behind some of those notes of the survivor mind, or of the victim mindset, can really, really help you lean into some joy, but also allow you to let go of some of that pain. Because ultimately that's what it is. When we're stuck in the victim mindset and we're saying that like we're not able to do something and we're a victim of XYZ, it's really just a matter of acknowledging and addressing that pain so that you can move forward into something that feels more wholesome and more growth driven, which is the survivor mindset. Because you are a survivor at the end of the day. If you've been through something that you shouldn't have been put through and you made it out on the other side, you are a survivor. You are not a victim of those circumstances. You may have been a victim in that instance, which I get because I have been too, but you are not a victim today. You are a survivor. You made it out on the other side and you are living, breathing, eating, sleeping, drinking, like you're doing all of the things. You're alive. And that's something worth expressing joy for. We have the abundance mindset, which honestly comes hand in hand with the survivor mindset, in that it's really hard for us to see the good that is constantly coming our way if we are not able to actually sit in that abundance and say there is more coming. Joy almost gives us a window into doing that. It allows us to say, oh, hey, maybe I could have more of this, or maybe there's more of this coming my way. How's that going to work? Or what's that going to look like? And it just keeps these spiral thoughts going and going and going. And if you've had thoughts like that, that's something that you should be really, really proud of. Some people fight for those types of thoughts their whole entire life. So even getting this far into the video, I want to say that what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and trusting yourself and believing in yourself to truly express the joy that you need to feel in order to lean into some abundance, because it's always finding you. And the last thing that I'll be talking about that joy can help with is stress alleviation. Now, this is one of the hardest things that we fight for, and so many people don't even realize how stressed they are. It can be astronomically dysregulating when we are unable to recognize that we are stressed, when we are absolutely beyond stress. And this is the case for so many people that I speak to when I host events here in New York City, when I go to events. So many people struggle with stress and they don't know what to do about it. And oftentimes the cure, the key, the whatever it might be, isn't necessarily sitting in the ugly. Sometimes it is, but it isn't always sitting in the ugly of what it is that might be happening in your life that's causing some stress. Sometimes it's about actually finding the joy that helps you unlock the other side of it. So it's like that teetering, I don't know, the scale, finding the perfect balance of joy and also addressing the things that come up in your life are going to help you get it. Aha, alleviate some stress. Up next, we have my joy story, and boy oh boy am I happy to share this one with you all. It has been a wild ride. I talked about my childhood, I talked about my divorce, I talked about the past few years working in the startup world. My life has been a little bit of a crazy, hectic but I live in New York City, one of the most beautiful places in the whole entire world, and there is so much joy to be found here. So much joy, and I'm going to share it with you all. Starting all the way back when I was a kid, joy was incredibly situational. It was something that I almost had to like negotiate or bargain for, something that I got only when I was in front of birds like American robins who were pestering each other. They were bouncing around and I thought they were doing these silly dances in the ground, and I just loved how expressive they were and how movement driven they were. But the second I would turn my head away, it's like that joy just like snapped right out of my hands. The same thing with I had my great grandpa, who was my absolute best friend. He really, really loved me. He taught me everything that I know about nature, and everything that I do is in his name. And I am just like ever indebted with the knowledge that he has given me. But with him, it was like these like extreme expressions of joy. Like I had never felt so happy in my whole entire life. Like this man brought things to life. He was amazing, and he was one of my first experiences with joy. And I'll never forget how, regardless of the animal, it could be a deer, it could be a fish, it could be, I don't know, a bird, like he just found a way to explore the joy and to express the joy. And I really, really loved and valued that about him. And I always craved more of it. Always, always. And as I got older, it got harder and harder to connect to. I was the oldest of 5, am the oldest of 5. And I was taking care of so many siblings, which meant there were so many highs and lows that I was chasing that it just felt like I hit a point, like almost in my teens, where it was like I was experiencing what I thought was like the high, which was really just this like flatlined emotion, just no emotions. And then this really low low, which was this really sad period where I felt lonely and I felt upset and I felt angry and I felt all of these emotions related to my younger childhood experiences, and so much of what I felt like my life had been taken away. I really struggled to get any higher than that like main baseline of really what it was numbness. Like I felt numb all of the time. And if I wasn't feeling numb, I was in those low points, and it was kind of just fluctuating. And that's kind of what I carried into my marriage. And I just kind of woke up one day and I decided, actually, no, like I've spent so many times with, admittedly, the birds. And I realized that true joy, like I wasn't even able to scrape the surface of slightly above that baseline with the partner that I was with. It was almost like I was being like chained back and held away from my true expression of joy, because my joy was then being used against me in different ways within the context of the relationship. So it made it really, really, really hard for me to feel like I could express joy and be myself and be holistic and authentic. And at some point I just had to sit down and ask myself, like, can I continue a life where my baseline is the highest that I can go? Like, can I, or do I, oh, that's a blue jay screeching above us. Like, can I continue that? And I really just felt like I couldn't. I felt like I felt like my life was being taken away from me, and my years were like dwindling down, even though I was only 27 years old when I made the decision to leave that relationship. I just knew that there was more joy out there for me to experience if I could just figure it out, if I could just hack it, if I could just learn how to express joy on my own, in my own way, then maybe I could come back to other dynamics, and not necessarily my marriage. I mean, that's done and solid, but more so like my friendships and being the person that I knew that I was, but because I couldn't access the joy that was within me, I almost felt like a shell of myself. I felt like I was constantly like out of character. And that did not feel good. If you've ever felt like you're out of character or like you're being pulled out of character, that it felt really bad. I was at a point where I just felt like I had no clue what joy was. I wanted to know what it was. I was so curious. I had more questions. I needed more information. I wanted to do deeper dives on myself, but I just couldn't do it in the relationships that I was in. I couldn't do it living in Chicago. And we talk about how joy is an extreme expression of happiness, and within happiness, it was almost like I couldn't even reach that. I couldn't even reach that until I went to Argentina, and I was almost completely alone. I mean, for the majority of the time, I was completely alone. And to be able to just explore on my own and enjoy really life, and not have to explain why I was happy or make my emotions make sense to someone who would never understand them to begin with, helped me in moving away from and understanding that joy was really what I was chasing, and I couldn't live a life where I was no longer able to, where I was not able to find that, and I was forced into just accepting whatever that dynamic was at the time. And so today, and then moving forward to the way that I experience joy, it is radical joy. Radical joy. And the reason why it's radical is because we're choosing it. You're choosing it. Every day you wake up and you say, I need this. I need to experience this. I need this. We usually start with a task list, but what if we started by the things that could bring us joy or have the opportunity to bring us joy in that day? Like, what if we began at the top of that list and then inched it down. It might be a worthwhile endeavor, and I'll talk about some birds right now that helped me get to that place. These birds have given me lots and lots of evidence that helps me understand that in order for me to truly express joy, I have to let go. And if you listened to my story just a few seconds ago, you probably can guess I might have some control issues, which makes sense, right? There are reasons, okay? However, part of experiencing joy is letting go. Letting go of the fear of what other people will think when they see your joy, the fear of what other people will say, how they'll react, if they'll give you a dirty look. None of that shiznat matters. None of it matters, because at the end of the day, joy is for us. Joy is something we get to take home and we get to be proud of. It's not for the other person to judge or to say that our joy doesn't look good. You know, I'm someone who loves stimming. I love movement. And so when I get really excited, movement's the first thing that comes to me. And I've had to learn how to become radically okay with people thinking I'm a weirdo moving in public or giving me dirty looks or doing, an erroneous amount of things that's supposed to make me feel bad about what I'm doing. But I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad in the slightest because I'm doing what I know is best for me. And at the end of the day, that has to be enough. Whether or not they think I'm weird, whether or not they think I'm different, I don't care. None of that matters. They're not going home with me. They're not going to see me tomorrow. That's the greatest thing about living in New York City. There are so many people passing by all the time that it allows you and reminds you that what these people think doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. So you've got to learn how to let go. And I'll tell you a bird that helped me do that. It was the bald eagle. Now, a little bit about the bald eagle. They have these dances in the sky when they find their mate, where they basically grab claws onto each other. They grasp claws, so the partner and the other bird will, and then they'll just spin in the air. Now, this is incredibly dangerous, obviously, because you can imagine if they're both spinning, they can't necessarily see how high they are. So if they fall and land on the ground, they're going to land pretty hard. Neither of them are flying, so they have to make sure they hit a certain altitude for them to then fall down, and then at that point the mating ceremony is over if they both sort of accept each other in this way. But their ability to let go completely of the control of even their physical body is quite inspiring to me, and I think there's a lot that we could even learn from that and take away from it. Sometimes joy can feel the safest in the arms of the ones that we love, and so learning how to express joy in people that feel safe, people that feel comfortable early on, can be really worthwhile in getting your toes wet with joy. Now, that being said, your experience with joy cannot be limited to just other people. Your experience with joy has to be something that you feel within yourself. So if there are other areas where you look for joy or where you go to find joy for yourself, that's going to be perfect, and that's a mallard. Making sure that your joy is up and up, regardless of whether or not you are with other people or you are alone. Joy should be expressed on both sides of the spectrum. And it's okay to do it in companionship, and bald eagles are the one ways that I know how. Our next bird is crows. And I love talking about the American crow because they are absolutely so beautiful, but they are also quite vocal and quite silly. As a corvidae, they bounce around, they'll shake around, you'll see them ruffling up leaves and throwing them around on the ground. But when I was in Seattle, Washington, I had this experience with American crows that kind of shaped my whole entire experience with them and reminded me exactly why I express joy in the way that I do. So I was sitting on the beach, and in front of me there's 5 or 6 American crows all hanging out together, and they're jumping around and they're flailing their arms, and they're picking sand up with their toes and kicking it out and back. And sometimes they're hitting their other crows, sometimes they're just hitting other sand. All of this to say, you are allowed to be silly and goofy and have fun and pick up some sand and throw it around. You're allowed to play in mud. You're allowed to play in a sandbox. I don't care what you do. Just have fun. Find something that feels tactically good to you and do it. Follow the crow's initiative too. Don't look around as people are watching you. Who gives a crap what they're looking at? Who cares if they're looking at you from their side eye or if they're talking about... I know objectively, I know that it's easier said than done, but if you really, really, really want to access joy and truly feel happiness, You have to let go of what other people are saying, what they're doing, what they're thinking. None of that matters. And if you continue to let it hold you back, you will never, and listen to me when I say this, you will not be able to accomplish your dreams. It is going to be one of those things that holds you back. So you have to let go and learn how to let go of what other people have going on in their minds. Because here's the trick too. You don't know what's going on in their mind. What if someone's looking at me right now and they're like, hey, she's so cool. She's dressed in all red. I love that. Awesome. Perfect. That's the best case scenario. And if they're thinking the worst case scenario about me, guess what? That's none of my business. That's none of my business. And if they're going to come up and they're going to say it to me, well, guess what? I got words to say too, okay? People can be rude. They're allowed to be rude. You're dealing with the daily public sometimes when you're outside experiencing joy. But you know what? That doesn't mean that you have to carry that energy within you. You can release it. You can say, this is not mine to carry, and move on. I want to see you do it. I want to see you try. So use the American crows as an example of why you should. Our third bird is really a situational bird, and it's incredibly timely because it is spring right now, and there are American robins and their nests literally everywhere. And if you're new to my channel, I love American robins. You can't get me to stop talking about them, and I never will. But in this case, imagine a nest with a bunch of little young American robins, and they are all just waiting for their parent to come home with a bunch of worms for them to enjoy. The parent returns back to the nest, and they have all of these amazing worms, and they're giving them to all their different young, and all of a sudden, we notice that these baby birds are just experiencing the holistic joy of food. That's it. They are just being fed and excited about being fed, making noises about being fed. That's all. They only have capacity for one experience, and that one experience is joy for food, excitement for food. There's a blue jay right above us screeching. Try to channel some of that joy. Maybe instead of us sitting there and thinking, oh, I have this, say for example, you have running water. I have running water, but I don't have this. What if instead of that, but I don't have this, we replace that with period? I have running water. I'm grateful for that. That brings me joy that I have running water. It brings me joy that I have food that fills my stomach. It brings me joy that I can come outside and go for a walk on such a beautiful day like today. Similar to a baby bird, just joy for food, period. We can express and carry some of that within ourselves too. It's just as we age, as we get older, all of these other thoughts come in at us, and we have so much different input, and especially with social media now telling us that we need to be XYZ, we need to experience XYZ, we need to be able to have this house and this car and this da-da-da-da-da, all of these 100 other things that we're supposed to be able to have by some age that doesn't even feel like you're totally ready enough to have those resources. Anyways, I digress on that point, but you're allowed to be happy with what you have. In fact, I encourage you to be happy with what you have. Experience joy with what's right in front of you. Because if you don't experience joy today, and when or if the circumstances change, and say you have an apartment that you loved all of the windows for, and then you change to a new apartment, but you love the interior, just not the windows, there's a part of you that will wish that you were more grateful or that you expressed more joy towards the windows that you did have. So while you have it in front of you, be joyful that it is. Our next bird is our white-throated sparrows. I've made so many videos about this bird, but I absolutely love them. They are migratory birds for us here in New York City, so I get to see them every winter and early spring, and it is such a blessing. They have a bright white throat, a yellow eye, and stripes down on through their head in 2 different colors. Now, the reason why I bring up white-throated sparrows is because they do not have it easy. Like I just said, they are migratory birds, so they are traveling north, south, north, south, north, south. Can you imagine every time you travel north and south having to find a new forage area, and the joy you must feel when you stumble upon that new forage area and it's perfection? It's exactly what you were looking for. Like, channel some of that joy around, hey, I found this, I did this, I created this. It's not easy to be constantly traveling, and oftentimes jobs can make us feel that way, that in a lot of ways we are migratory with jobs. Like, Sometimes you have to keep moving. Sometimes you have to stay in one area. Sometimes you have to be adaptable. Sometimes you can take a pause. Like, there are so many different experiences that we have depending on the different environments that we're in, but being grateful for what those experiences can bring along and into our lives is really going to help us process and make sure that we're able to keep going, similar to our white-throated sparrows, which will be heading up north soon, and we will no longer be seeing them. But if you're back in NYC, check out my tours and you can join me for one. My friend, you are allowed to feel joy for your accomplishments. Celebrate you, be excited for you, be grateful for you, and think about you, gosh darn it. Our next and last bird that I will be talking about that gives me evidence for my own personal sense of accomplishment and joy is the Steller's Jay. Steller's Jays are one of my absolute favorite birds. I've had so many experiences with them over on the West Coast, specifically in Seattle a few times when I've headed over there, and they are so beautiful. They're vocal, yet in comparison to a blue jay that actually seems to be quite shy, they're not as bold in terms of coming down and interacting with humans. So that does make them a little bit more, let's say, nuanced. These are incredibly expressive birds. As I said, they're vocal, but they're not just vocal in their call, they're vocal in their plumage. They have bright blue feathers that you can see all times of the year because these are year-round species, but they are absolutely stunning. And if someone tells you at any point in your life, if they tell you, hey, you can't be beautiful, you can't be shy, you can't be expressive, you can't whatever it is that it might be, they're wrong. That is incorrect. You're allowed to be whatever you want to be at whatever point you want to be. So take a note from the blue jay. You deserve to, or a Steller's Jay, you deserve to experience holistic joy and also find the joy in the mundane. You know, these blue jays are doing usually the same thing day in, day out, day in and day out. So it's important to remind yourself that you can continue to experience some of that joy and find it within yourself, even though it might not necessarily be the easiest thing to do. As long as you can find it. If you can find one thing to experience joy about in the day, then you did it, my friend. And I'm very proud of you. Now, I want to share with you all a recent joy story that I had in my life right here in New York City, and it actually happened nearby here. So, I live in New York City. I host events here in New York City, specifically community-based events. So I host an event for neurodivergent folks to get together, to be themselves, to be outrageous, to be bold, to be silly, to be goofy, to be all the things they wanted to be, but never had a place to be it. That is the home in my events. Okay, so we have laid the ground, my friends. I experience such immense joy when I create space for people that would not have normally existed. If I did not start hosting these events, the events literally would not exist. Like, they wouldn't exist, and they would continue to not exist. And they give people an opportunity to be their most authentic selves, to be them that they want to be, or that they know they can be. It brings me a lot of joy to be able to curate those spaces and to bring people little pieces of joy that, honestly, the reason why I started hosting these events was because I was missing it myself. I was feeling lonely. I was feeling like I was lacking community and people that I could turn to, people that I could be myself with. So to be able to satisfy the version of me 2 years ago when I moved to New York City and when I was struggling, it feels so special and it feels so personal that when someone does tell me that they feel more unlocked or they feel more open or they feel more authentic to themselves, then that just warms my heart. It makes every single ounce of effort that I've put into these events and this ecosystem all the more worth it, and I am so grateful. At the end of the day, when I struggle with joy, that is what brings it back. That is what reminds me of the capacity that I have to continue to experiencing joy, giving joy, gifting joy, and being joy. Next, I want to talk about a few things that might seem a little bit more mundane, but it's really important that you find joy not just in the big moments, but also in what we might call the smaller moments, our smaller wins. So things like finishing a book feel really, really joyful and exciting to me. Launching a new event type. I just talked about all these different events that I've been doing, or this event type. I host like 8 different event types. And so it's really, really special to be able to get to curate that for people and make them feel a little bit at home or more at home than what they traditionally might feel. Training for my half marathon at the end of April. This is something that brings me immense, immense joy. I am so, so, so excited. And it is just so astoundingly special to be able to be training for something that feels like such a big feat, such as a half marathon. There was a point in time when 0.44 miles was the most amount of running that I could do, and then I had to cut it there. So to now be in a place where I can run 13 miles, and it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm taking all this strain out on my body. It just feels special. It feels exciting. It feels worthwhile. And I'm just so excited to get out there and run and run and run and run. Taking care of my home is another one. So making sure that things are clean, that my home is a representation of, honestly, my brain. That's something that's really, really important to me. And it brings me a lot of joy to look around and see my space incredibly clean and exactly how I want it to be. And then lastly, one big, big, big thing that continues to bring me joy, but also brought me joy when I was away on my trip, which was seeing the Ecuadorian trogon, one of the most beautiful birds that I've ever seen in my whole entire life. They are absolutely stunning. They have this yellow eye ring, and I just was so shocked that I was able to see it. But seeing that bird really ignited something in me, reminded me of who I am, reminded me that I'm capable in all of these different ways, and that I'm allowed to feel extreme joy regardless of the company that I'm in. And you're allowed to do the same. You're allowed to get excited. You're allowed to be passionate. You're allowed to be motivated. You're allowed to be the most you that you want to be to get to where you want to go, to accomplish your dreams, because joy is a vital, vital piece to that. Now, y'all, this is the second episode of what I've been putting together for you all as it relates to values, but I want to share an exciting announcement that I will have a book that will be coming out in the late fall, early winter, and I'm so excited to be sharing this with you all. I've been working on it for quite some time, and it's going to be walking you all through similar values as I did in this podcast episode. So I will be sharing more about that in the upcoming podcast episodes, but I cannot wait to have more updates with you all and continue sharing. So stay tuned for more on that front as I guide us into our last section here together today. I want to leave us with a reminder about joy, and I alluded to this at the beginning of the episode, and I'm going to bring it back full circle because it's really important that you understand that everything that I talked about in this podcast episode related to joy is not something that is default. It is not default to experience joy. It is not default to experience extreme happiness, elatedness. Like, none of this that I'm talking about is inherently natural. Joy is a choice. Joy is something that you look out for. Happiness is something that you experience, right? It's an emotion, as is joy, but happiness is something that can feel more natural, something that can come in a blitz moment. Joy is something you say, I choose to see the happiness in this. And that's why we say that it is something that you experience in addition to happiness. They're not synonymous. And if you look at joy and you say, wow, that's too much of a hill for me to climb, it's too big, I want you to understand that all it takes is small steps inching towards joy. I talked about finishing a book. That is joy. I talked about sitting down and watching American Robins bounce around. That is joy. Whatever you deem to be joy in your own definition, it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. It can be anything. It can be getting enough water, hitting your water goal for the day. It doesn't matter. All I need you to do, though, is focus on actually finding that joy every single day, so that when you go home and you lay down in bed, the emotion that sticks with you the most and in your subconscious is joy. So I have a task for you to really drive this point home, and I want you to get a notebook out. I want you to buy a notebook, do whatever it is so that you have a notebook, and I want you to leave it open on your counter. And every day when you come home, or when you sit down to eat, or when you do what you do in the evening. I want you to sit down and write down a bullet point, just date and bullet point, and I want you to write something that brought you joy. Something that someone said, something that you said, something that you did, something that you're proud of, something that brings you joy. And I want you, even if it feels fake, I don't care if it feels fake, it's going to feel fake. I want you to put a smile on your face. And I want you to smile as you're reading those things out loud, because I want you to remind yourself that you're allowed to be happy for the things that you've accomplished in that day, because life is not easy. Life is not easy. There are so many things that get thrown at us all of the freaking time. And sometimes it feels like life is actually working against us. And that's why practices like this are so vital in keeping your head above water. Because like I said, it's not easy. It's not easy. And we can sit here and we can hope that it gets easier, and we can demand easier from the universe, and we can do all of these things, but unless you're actually creating it within your own space and within your own home, it's going to be harder for it to be reflected in your outside world. So whatever you want on the outside, you got to learn how to express it inside. And once you unlock that, there's nothing you can't do. And if you struggle with this, I want to give you another hint, because I talked about stimming a little bit earlier. If you're not familiar with stimming is like the rapid movement of body parts in conjunction. Typically, it can be done like with a rhythm, but usually done like in a formatic way. And so what I love about stimming is it allows me to express and feel emotions before I cognitively feel them. And so if you're feeling blocked by joy, you're not able to reach that expression of a smile, or feeling, oh, there's some Canada geese above us. You're blocked. I want you to get up and I want you to shake that joy through your body. I want you to move it out. I want you to shake your arms up and down, left and right, whatever you got to do, just move, just get moving, because that's going to be the key to everything. I know you can do it. I'm really excited to see how this practice will work with you or for you, and how joy will continue to integrate into your life, because once you start doing these things, joy finds you in other places, and it will continue to do that. My friend, I am sending you so much love. I really appreciate you watching this episode. Be sure to subscribe, like, send it to a friend, share with all of the people that you love. I love you. I cannot wait to see you on the other side. I will be doing our 3rd episode coming out next week, so stay tuned for that. I can't wait to share with you all a lot more about our values-based series over that Quirky Bird Girl, and we'll just keep it going. Bye!